Today I made a My Little Pony cake. It's Twilight Sparkle. Keep watching to see how. There's a new My Little Pony movie coming out very soon, so I decided to make a cake in honor of that movie. I decided to make Twilight Sparkle because she's a little bit different than the rest. One, she's purple, which is awesome because I love purple. And two, she has like a totally different hairdo than everybody else. She has her straight edge bangs with her highlights, and I like it. And of course, she's actually the main character of the movie, so.
To begin making this cake, I started with the elements that needed the most time to dry. Try to make these a few days ahead of time if you're proactive enough. If not, at least a few hours. Mix some Tylose or CMC with purple fondant so that it dries faster. For the ears, I just freehanded it and tried to cut them both out the same size. You can use a stencil for this if you want. I then folded the corners into each other and stuck them together so they look like rounded cute ears. Lay them to dry down like this. I then moved on to make her beautiful unicorn horn. For this, I took some light purple fondant and rolled it out into a rod, and then tapered one side off to come to a point. I then did the exact same thing with another rod. Lay them down side by side and stick the two tapered ends together. You can use a bit of water for this if they don't stick easily. Then take the two bottoms and twist the two pieces of fondant together. Keep going until you get as many coils as you want. I didn't actually count how many she has, I probably should have, but cut the horn with a knife at your desired length. I used a bit of water and paintbrush to stick the two together.
I don't actually know what this is, but it's the closest thing I could find to actually make me look like a pony.
Then take a long wooden dowel or a candy stick and shove the stick right down the middle. Be careful not to squish it too hard. Another way to do this is to wrap the fondant around the stick as well. I didn't want to dry this laying down or it'll get dented from the back, so stick the horn right into a styrofoam block and let it dry. Once it's completely dry, I brushed the horn with some piping gel to make it stick. You could also use water for this. I then took some lilac colored edible sparkles and brushed it all over the horn to make it look extra sparkly. Sparkle is in her name after all. And you definitely can't forget to make Twilight Sparkle's wings. Not all of the ponies have them, so she wouldn't be an alicorn without them. I again just drew my own stencil and cut them out into the same purple gum paste. I forgot to record the part where I stuck the smaller wings onto the larger wings with some water. Remember, these will be standing upright, so make sure to let these dry for as long as possible.
I remember My Little Pony from when I was a kid. It was so popular back then, and it's still so popular now. These things just don't leave. My sister and I used to love My Little Pony, but I don't really remember ever watching a TV show about My Little Pony. I guess we just liked them because they were popular, I guess. I don't really know. But I'm so glad that they're still around because them being around makes me feel a little bit less old.
Now onto the actual cake. I made 2 layers of chocolate cake and 2 layers of vanilla cake for this cake. I would have made this cake purple, but to be honest, I had cake already and didn't want to waste it, so chocolate and vanilla it is. I cut off the domes of these cakes and showered them in simple sugar. I put some buttercream on the board and then layered my cakes with chocolate Swiss meringue buttercream between each layer. I like to use a piping bag to make my icing layers even. Once it's layered, before putting it in the fridge, I use my leveler to make sure the cake is leveled. Push the icing down a bit to even the cake out if needed. Then put it in the fridge for the icing to harden a bit for 20 to 30 minutes. I'll be using my acrylic cake boards to help ice this cake. It makes it much easier to get sharp edges. You could also use regular cardboard cake boards for this. So to make sure that the cake fits within the edges of the boards, I cut off the sides of the cake to make sure there is enough room for the icing to be placed between the cake and the edge of the board. You can tell by making sure the cake has about 1 centimeter of rim all around the cake by the bottom board. I then gave this cake a quick crumb coat with Swiss meringue buttercream that I dyed with purple gel coloring to make Twilight Sparkle's body color. Put this cake in the fridge to dry for about 30 minutes. To To use the acrylics or round cake boards, first put a piece of non-stick mat at the bottom. Put the acrylic board on top and then put another smaller non-stick mat on top of that to make sure that the cake doesn't move around. Then put your cake on top of the board. Put a thick layer of buttercream on top of your cake. Then stick wax paper cut to the size of your acrylic or cake board with some icing to the board. Then place it directly on top of the cake. I use 2 bench scrapers to quickly check to make sure there is enough space to add icing all around the cake and to make sure that my boards are lined up evenly. Again, use your leveler to make sure that your cake is still leveled. Then add a thick layer of icing all around your cake, filling in the gap between the cake and the edge of the acrylics. Don't worry about being too neat here, we will be scraping off all of the excess icing. Use the bench scraper held straight up against the top and bottom board and scrape the edge all around the cake, removing all the excess icing as you go. Once you've gone around, you may notice gaps or holes that don't have icing. Just fill them in again with some icing and use the bench scraper again. Do this as many times as you need to until you get your straight edges. Put this in the fridge to cool for another 30 minutes. I actually put another small layer of icing onto the cake once cooled to add a bit of texture to the cake. I feel like ponies wouldn't be completely smooth, so I left it to have a little bit of different shades of purple on the surface. To remove the top board, dip your offset spatula into some hot water to heat it up, and then make sure to dry it off quickly. Put the spatula between the wax paper and the board, and slide it through around the cake, letting the spatula melt the icing as you go. Heat it up again if necessary until the board pops right off. Then you can just peel back the wax paper off the cake and fill in the top of the cake with some extra buttercream, making it as smooth as possible. Once you're done, put this cake back into the fridge to let the top cool off.
In all of my years of making cake and all of the unicorn craze that's been going around, I still haven't actually made a unicorn cake. So this is actually my very first unicorn pony type cake, and I loved it. Making the horn and using all the sparkles and making all the colors were so much fun. You can make this cake into any My Little Pony cake that you want or any unicorn cake that you want. You can even invent your own characters. Get creative, change up the colors, do whatever you want, and just go for it.
To make the eyes of Twilight sparkle, I just looked up a picture of her eyes and drew them out by hand to make my own stencil. I used my X-Acto knife to cut out each section of her eyes and cut out each piece in some colored fondant to make the colors of her eyes. I didn't feel like I rolled the gum paste out thin enough for her eyes, so instead of layering the eye pieces on top of each other, I actually cut them out separately and then glued them together with some water to make it one flat piece. I then put on the little bits of pink in her eyes on top.
And don't forget, if you make a My Little Pony cake, or if you make any of the other cakes that I've made, I would love to see them. Please tag me on Instagram or send it to me in my email. I would love to see your creations.
I then made a tiny nose and nostrils out of purple gum paste. Start adding all of your decorations to the cake. I didn't have a stencil for this because I was making it up as I went along, so I just estimated where the eye should go, making sure it looked even. Make sure to leave enough room for her bangs and her nose. To add her ears, I added a bit more buttercream to the top of her head for the ears to stick to and push the ears right in. To make her hair, I colored fondant navy blue, bright pink, and purple to match her highlights. I rolled out strips of fondant and added them to her head one by one using a picture as my guide. I didn't go all the way to the back of her head until I added the wings. I added her signature highlights by adding one pink and one purple stripe on one side of her face. I then added her wings to the back of her head with some buttercream. Your wings have to be really dry and hardened for it to be able to stand upright like this. Once the wings were in place, I added a few more hair strands to the back of her head and to the front. I'm not sure if it's hair or a tail, just go with it. And there you have it. Oh no, wait, I almost forgot the horn. Oops. I pushed the hair aside and pushed the horn right into the middle of her head. You may want to actually do this before putting on her hair. There you go, and now that's it.
Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and you like this cake, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't yet seen my last video, click here to watch it. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel right over here. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.